Hi, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Bitchuation Room podcast. So happy to have you here. So happy you press play. So happy you are listening. So happy you're watching on all the things and all the places with all the people. We have such a great show today. Nelini Stamp is in the Bitchuation Room. This is happening. All right. Of the Working Families Party. We're going to get into some stories. We got two more candidates running for president. One on the Republican side and one on the independent third party side. That is the brother Cornel West. And then very much not brother Mike Pence. Like, I don't even know if he has siblings. They've disowned him at this point. But Mike Pence is running for president. We will see how he is setting himself apart from, DeSantis and Trump. And in fact, with that, we're starting a new segment, end of the show. Last segment will be, I'm calling it Small D Energy Primary. And that is, of course, the matchup between Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. And we're going to see, how's it going? What's going on? Ron, obviously last week launched his campaign. He's making the media rounds. Is he crushing it? Or is it more cringe? We'll get into that and get Nelini's thoughts on all that. And then, of course, Noura Erakat is here, going to give us an update on what's going on in Palestine and the occupied territories, also inside of Israel. Thoughts about the movement against the judicial overreach and the grab that Netanyahu is trying to orchestrate here, and what that means for Israel, and maybe what that means more broadly for the region and the Palestinian people. So I'm very, 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 very excited and lucky to have her here. But I'm excited and lucky to have you here. So hey, click all the things, like the like button, leave a 5-star review on iTunes. I read every single one, and it helps people discover this small little labor of love that is the Bitchuation Room. And also, this show is not the only show of the show. There's more show after the show. Every Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. You know what it is. It is the bonus bish for the patrons. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Of course, you can watch it live, but if you happen to miss it, you can only watch it back if you are a patron. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. You can listen to it back as well if you don't want to sit there and watch. Also, if you're a member on YouTube or Twitch, you can watch those back. And last week, we had a great bonus bish. We talked about how a eating disorders hotline is being replaced by AI. And her name is Tessa, and she is a wellness bot. Yes, we live in hell. So I try a few different Tessas on. I'm not sure which one I like in terms of how she sounds. So be sure to check that out. Very fun. Oh, I also talked about Tara Reid, who remember was the former Biden staffer who accused him of sexual assault, fleeing to Russia. So if you're curious about those stories, patreon.com/Bitchuation Room, get my take. And of course, it's such a great hang. And also, by the by, we have merch. This show has merch. Bitchuationroom.com. 2 kinds of t-shirts. The Frantifa t-shirt, the Bitchuation Room logo t-shirt, and then some stickers and a tote bag. And yes, I am looking into the bitch caps. I'm looking into them. We're circling around a color that we like. And I'm excited to release them. Excited. I probably have to raise, apparently I'm not making any money from the merch. Sorry, this is inside baseball. Not making money from the merch. People. And that's because it is union made. And that's expensive. Turns out supporting workers, putting your money where your mouth is, as we say on this show, being about it instead of just bitching about it, costs money. So I probably have to raise the price about $5. So I apologize, but hey, it's going to workers and it's helping me keep something so I'm not in the red. And I am very good at economics. So, that's why I'm here. Anyway, support the show in any way you can, and thank you so much in advance. But for now, let's get into it. Let's get into the things. Here we go. This is What Are You Bitching About? So many things I'm bitching about. My baby's transitioning to 2 naps instead of 3 naps, and it's just a whole thing. Trying to figure that out. I do want to do something different with my hair, but my hairstyle, this lady at the salon went on maternity leave, and the other lady who I like is an anti-vaxxer and listens to Rogan, so I'm back on the hunt. I need like a dating app, but for hairstylists. But the real thing I'm bitching about is it's Pride Month, guys. Happy Pride. Everybody who celebrates, who is gay and fabulous, who is an ally of someone who's gay and fabulous, people who are trans out there, obviously extra special love to the trans community here and everywhere in the world. I am bitching about the fact that apparently this month, a lot of corporations are deciding that they're not going to sort of do the rainbow logo thing, right? And there's a number of reasons for that. It's kind of clear that it's incredibly transparent, meaning when they sort of like say all the right things and have the little tweet and have like the, happy pride and rainbow flag, but they are, Lockheed Martin. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna call bad faith on that one, right? Like, we don't necessarily need like to queer the bombers, That being said, it seems like also, and let's be real, gay folks have been calling out corporate co-optation of their movement and of the struggle for, recognition, lack of discrimination, inclusivity for many, 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 many years when it comes to pride, and who is involved in the Pride March, etc. And yet it's this year that magically and mysteriously some of these corporations have decided that they won't sort of draw attention to the fact that it is Pride Month. And you got to wonder, is that because they're like turning the corner on, maybe we shouldn't just hop on the rainbow flag train because, we are Monsanto, you know what I mean? Or is it probably because the right is having a field day with anti-gay stuff? I'm gonna go with the latter, right? That they're like, look, we saw what happened to Budweiser. We see what is happening to, I don't know, Chick-fil-A. We saw what's happening to Target, and Target is a perfect example of a company that couldn't stand by this merch that they made with rainbow flags on it and wasn't able to. I mean, like, here's my thing about Target, yo. You're gonna pull the products from your store as if you didn't have the security to like protect employees. If there's someone trying to go full Karen on you or just get crazy, like, yes, that's scary. I'm not saying that's not scary, but the answer isn't we're going to pull the products. The answer is, hey, how about one of the many like security people and like undercover shoppers you have, someone, to push back on that. Right. And we've seen some videos of them doing exactly that. But the answer is not just to recoil and be like, well, we're just going to pull this because it's too controversial. It's not controversial. And the reason we know that being gay, that Pride Month is not controversial, is because all of these corporations want a piece of it. And all of these corporations want to be seen as allies. And all these corporations know it's a huge month. It's very celebratory. I think probably more so than most, like most months that celebrate diversity and inclusion of, Black, brown, like Asian American History Month, Black Pride Month. Like, I think it's Pride Month, really, or Black History Month. It's Pride Month that kind of outdoes them all, right? And the other thing, last thing I'll say on this, Pride, if you talk to a young person, Pride is like a full month of Halloween. Like Pride, especially, I'm talking about San Francisco, but I think more and more in cities across and places across this country, Pride is like, oh, I get to wear booty shorts and feel fabulous and no one can like say anything to me. I'm there. Like, it's fun. You don't have to be like 18 or older. It's like a party in the streets. We get to wear rainbows and we get to be silly. Like, I as like a 16-year-old, sadly did not participate in as much Pride as I would have liked to. But now, like, I'm like, I would have been there. Like, I would have been that person, And I should probably get out to something fun. I should get out to a drag show, she said, turning her New York Times. Sipping her adult sippy cup. Anyway, the point is I'm sick. I hate the corporate, the corporate like co-optation, But I think the worst thing is to not have that, right? Like, I think it is good to show that corporations do stand with and for gay people. And honestly, I wish that Disney would leave Florida. But they're not going to do that. And lastly, I'll just say there are ways to support corporations and businesses that actually give back to the LGBTQ plus community. So, places apparently like Target, companies like Kenneth Cole, Reebok, like when they're selling their rainbow stuff, they are donating a portion of their proceeds to, great organizations. So it exists, it's out there, and I think we can, that's sort of where the rubber meets the road. That's sort of where, money where your mouth is type shit. So they're trying, they're doing it. And the answer though isn't like, oh, we don't like the co-optation, so you should say nothing. I think the answer is no. We do the co-optation, but actually support these causes, actually boycott states, or actually try and influence legislation. So, TBD with Disney, but I digress. I've gone on long enough. And now joining me in the Bitchuation room for the, I think, second or third time. As I stall for the proper bio, progressive activist, grassroots organizer, leading national voice on racial and economic justice, and director of strategy and partnerships with Working Families Party, Nelini Stamp.
Hi. How's everyone doing?
Welcome. Good to have you. I'm so glad we were able to make it. And hope you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Nelini, what are you bitching about? We're getting into a lot of stuff. We have a very interesting conversation coming up about Mr. Cornel West. But before that, what are you bitching about today?
So I just recently finished the documentary Shiny Happy People, which is about, and it's the subtitle is I always say it wrong because I want to say it in like Spanish, but Duggar, not Duggar, Duggar Family Secrets. I know Duggar is the way I want to say it. Duggar Family Secrets. And that was the family that, for folks who don't know, 19 and Counting was a television show on the Learning Channel at the time, which I don't know how it was called the Learning Channel, and I don't know what made it came to be. But what was shocking to me actually about this documentary, besides like knowing that they were a weird Christian fundamentalist family, like what was really shocking is that the television show, and you were just talking about all of the, folks who are just saying like, woke is LGBTQ and bye drag and all that stuff. And there's this homeschooling movement, so you don't say gay in schools. But this homeschooling movement was popularized by this family on national television.
On the Learning Channel of all places.
The Learning Channel of all places. And they were a moneymaker. Yeah. Like they were the biggest moneymaker. And it was kind of wild because David Zaslav makes an appearance because he was advocating for this family to be on television.
Oh, God.
Who now is in charge of Warner Brothers Discovery, who is one of the most evil folks in the Writers Guild strike, as we see. So it was just blowing my mind to see how a reality television show popularized what we're actually seeing on every day now. What we're seeing with this, like, homeschool your children, or in North Hollywood, I saw last week that there were parents protesting a pride in North Hollywood. Like we're seeing this everywhere. And the thing that was kind of wild to me about the documentary was that Josh Duggar, he ran for state senate. He was in the Arkansas state senate. Very good friends with Mike Huckabee. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is the governor now. And like they are repeating, now that I look at the principles of this kind of religious cult that they were a part of, which is called the Institute of Basic Life, it's actually what we're seeing.
The Institute of not wrapping it up.
Yeah. It's like, that's what we see now. Like these folks. And so it just mentioned like Generation Joshua, which I actually didn't realize was a project of the homeschooling movement to get homeschool people in the highest levels of government. And one of their, guess who's one of their alumni? He's a former
Mike
congressman.
Pence. No.
Madison Cawthorn.
Oh, Cawthorn. They're the only thing. Bro, the only thing worse than being governed by like a bunch of libertarians is being governed by a bunch of homeschooled ass, like antisocial weirdos that have 18 brothers, you know, and sisters. Just like, oh my God, you're so unstable. You do not know how to talk to people. So, and the Duggars, I love that, because I love the sort of like there's always some fucking institute or some like secret society that you didn't know about behind the scenes. But obviously then the out front scandal was that one of the Duggars was like abusing his siblings, correct?
Yeah, that's the whole documentary actually talks to one of the sisters who, if for the first time, is speaking out against her family.
Wow.
And Josh touched them in 2003. Their show didn't get canceled to 2014. And then what they did, but wait, they canceled it and then made the two daughters who were abused, the stars of the show, rebranded it because it was such a cash cow for Discovery, which owned the Learning Channel. And the daughter, Jill was saying through the documentary, till this day, she's never seen a dime. It was all her parents signed it all away. Yep.
Fucking, of course not.
Yep.
No. Yep. It's the height. That is the height of exploitation. Like, I'm not saying I would pocket most of the money if I ever made my daughter a star, but no, that is, oh, that's so sick, yo. That is so sick. And so, and like, I think so the other thing that happened this week that I find fascinating is that like big expose on like Chris Licht of CNN, right? And, you know, I was going to talk about it on this show, but it's too much. The problem is with this whole expose that apparently it's like, oh, Chris Licht of CNN, he's dead after the Trump town hall. It's going to be terrible. He's going to be ousted. I don't even know. Did he get fired yet? But I'm like, yeah, but who is he answering to? He's answering to David Zaslav. Like, he's making it seem in this entire interview that it's him, that he's sort of a maverick, that it's no. And at the end of the day, he's a Tom Wamsgans running cover for Mattson, running cover for Logan Roy. Like, that's all he is. He's that suit. It's Zaslav who's behind all this shit. And that is so creepy that you can oversee a show with that kind of premise. And then there was like abuse. The show continued. And then you just get to be president of a major media empire. Like,
it's so bizarre. It was just like the whole thing was bizarre. And I mean, it's also just like you feel for these women, right? They were raised in this environment. They didn't know anything. They're not allowed to watch TV. They're not allowed to even though they were on TV, they were not allowed to watch TV.
Is this part of their homeschooling?
Yeah, this is a part of the Institute of Basic Life Principles, whatever it's called. Yeah. And so you're not allowed to actually watch TV, but yet they wanted to use television to give their message to the masses. And the legacy is, we are seeing the legacy today of like folks going back to like the fundamentalist culture, but making it more internet acceptable or TikTok acceptable.
Oh yeah.
Fun, you know, like you see that. That's what's happening. They want
right. It's normalizing it rather than being like they're not like seen as outliers or weirdos. It's just, that's really creepy. The Institute of Basic Ass Life. we're really basic. This is the Institute of like basic bitches. And
it's wild.
We wear our bonnets. We love them. This is my sister wife, Rose all day. Also, anyway, sorry, I'm trying to go with this. Somehow this is a thing. And by the way, Nelini, I have to tell you, this is an aside before we move on. So I was like trying to watch something. I was like, maybe I want to watch a new show, something mindless, something funny. And I remember how much you were singing the praises of Real Housewives, which is another passion of yours. Yes. And other than, you know, obviously grassroots organizing and racial justice and, you know, political revolution. So I was like, I remember Nelini talked a lot about, you know, Salt Lake City and how great that was. And I don't need a defense because we don't have enough time, but I swear to you, my actual face watching, I watched the recap for like before season 3 began. I watched the whole recap and I go, absolutely not. And I like, absolutely not was like the words that came out of my mouth.
It was bad. Amazing.
I was like, you know what? It's different strokes. Okay. I'll watch the Great British Christmas special in the middle of summer. All right. Let's get into the week. Many things happened, but let's just talk about these two stories that came across my radar. This is the week where. Okay, so former Vice President Mike Pence is running for president. That's right. Mike Pence filed papers this week, and he's announcing, I believe, in the coming days, by the time you watch this, or he might have already announced, and, probably might have looked something like this. This is Mike Pence, just, I believe, this week at a roast and ride, which now obviously I should have figured out what the hell this was. But it is I guess it's part of a pack. God. Oh my God, this is so bad. So it's an Iowa roast and ride, right? Because you got to go to Iowa and you got to do that. And so there he was. There he is at the roast and ride, right? Getting ready to announce his candidacy. Yes, in Iowa.
Oh, I guess Republicans still have to. They're still first.
Go to Iowa?
Yeah, because it's not first in the Democrats no more. They messed that up.
Yeah, no, they were like, you do not get that privilege anymore. I thought it was always New Hampshire.
I think it's Iowa now is first for the Republicans.
For Republicans, all right. Paige is saying no. Okay, you need to help me with my fact checking here. But okay, so Mike Pence, and he's been trying to carve out this lane, Nelini. He's been trying, former vice president, he's been trying to and he said, stand on the legacy of Donald Trump. Absolutely, I believe in everything we did. I believe in all, the children that we locked up and threw away the key. I stand by all the great things we did for fascism and the project of, yes, Christian nationalism. But just that one little weensy-beensy thing that happened at the end, that's the one I don't support. That's the thing that and he's legitimately said that, that he believes that it was going great. And then the president didn't listen to his lawyers and it all went off the rails, which actually, I don't know what percentage of Republicans, if it was the pandemic isn't real and you should inject bleach, what it was for them. But I think for some Republicans, it was January 6th and it was that moment. Right. But here he is in a fairly recent interview with ABC, and he's being shown audio footage of Donald Trump talking about whether or not Mike Pence was in danger on January 6th, which, by the way, we know he was, and that they barely made it out, and his staff were traumatized from that. And here's his response.
We're saying hang Mike
because
Pence.
It's common sense, John. It's common sense that you're supposed to protect. How can you, if you know a vote is fraudulent, right? Yeah. How can you pass on a fraudulent vote to Congress?
I mean, he's effectively justifying or excusing the actions of people who were calling for you to be hanged.
There was no excuse for the violence that took place at the Capitol on January 6th, and I'll never diminish it as long as I live. But look, the president's wrong. He was wrong that day, and I had actually hoped that he would come around in time, John, that he would see that the cadre of legal advisors that he surrounded himself with had led him astray, but he hasn't done so. And I think it's one of the reasons why the country just wants a fresh start.
It's one of the reasons why the country wants a fresh start. In other words, we're tired of hearing about the fact that you didn't lose, or you did because you did lose, and we all know it. It's like he's splitting the difference between the Nikki Haley and I don't know what Tim Scott's doing. I don't know what his lane is, but and then the DeSantis over here, and DeSantis is no, I'm better at being Trump than Trump is.
Right.
I
Yeah.
want the MAGA, like prying the MAGA baton. And Pence is sort of like, look, we got everything we wanted. We have all these psychos on the Supreme Court. Can't we just get back to, I don't know, like deporting people, right?
Separating families and kids, like, like the average thing that you do on a Monday through Wednesday. It's just like the average things. Yeah. I mean, I feel like Pence is just, he's literally just trying to say, not January. He's just trying to have a carve out of like, of course not January 6th, but everything else. Yeah, totally. We should have kept schools open during COVID. We should have kept everything open. Why didn't they, like, and I just don't know if that's, I don't know what his strategy is there, because you have people like the base, that is the one thing at the base that the base feels really strongly about, is that they feel like Trump's base, the base that they're actually fighting for, feels that January 6th was stolen. Other things they're split on. Some of Trump's base actually were like, COVID was a terrible response because they lost family members or what, what have you, right? And so that's the one thing that people feel very strongly about. And I don't know what his angle, I don't know what his winning coalition angle is.
If you were advising him, where's the winning coalition?
I was like, if I was advising him, I'd be like, what's your winning coalition? Because Trump has everything and has the actual thing. And then DeSantis has like the new, like the anti-woke thing. So like, where are you?
Yeah, exactly. Where is he standing? And it's true though. It's a little bit like Bill Barr. Bill Barr was also the same, where it was like, I am absolutely for thwarting democracy in every single which way, except for what happened on January 6th. Like, that's where I draw the line. But do you need me to clear protesters with, like federal agents in order for you to hold up a Bible? Down. You need me to run like, interception with the Mueller report? I'm down, even though the Mueller report didn't even fucking incriminate the president or said he couldn't be charged. So it's just like, I don't know. And yet here's this is super anecdotal, but I feel like the Republicans that I know, they switched to Biden because of combo of the pandemic is very much real. And it's too much. It's too much drama. There's too much drama. So I do think that, like, you see the people who are coming out to the rallies nowadays, and it is like, talk about homeschool. I mean, like, these people were just like mostly just homeschooled on a trampoline and like out in their front yard. I'm sorry, I don't know why that feels.
They're like deadheads too, and like this is as a deadhead, they're deadheads that travel and follow Trump.
They're groupies.
They're groupies that are not just like from the local community. They're like, I traveled all the way from whatever state and whatever town I'm from, and I'm wearing a bedazzled red, white, and blue outfit.
Yes. And yes, I do. I am completely wine drunk at 11 a.m. But the like whatever this, what do they call it? Like the six-wheeler? I'm like, 6-wheeler, 8-wheeler, 10-wheeler, 12-wheeler. They know how to drive. They know how to drive like their big ass mobile homes or whatever, drunk as hell, and it's fine. No, yeah, and they're people who are like maybe they're like already collecting Social Security or I don't know what. But anyway, the other person
town hall tomorrow. I guess that's
Mike Pence is a town hall, and let me tell you, that fly is ready. Girl is getting her nails did.
Girl went from the Met Gala, because I don't know if you saw.
Yes,
the girl, right? Like the girl, like talked to the cockroach from the Met Gala. They made a plan. They got some outfit, and now she's going to the town hall.
Right. Oh my God, that roach from Met Gala was so good. That pizza rat, all of the random animals that shouldn't be where they are, but yet are. The other person who just filed today, Chris Christie, former New Jersey governor. There he is. I mean, he's there in our minds. So again, all the ones who wronged Trump, all the rhinos. There they are. So we'll see. I'm excited for all of the things. Here's the one thing you can say about Pence. He will not be the nominee. He is absolutely, like, if we think DeSantis doesn't have any kind of zhuzh or charisma or ability to like captivate the American spirit. It's like, yeah, you're Cheney, Dick Cheney had the humility.
Yep.
Even war criminals like Dick Cheney have the humility to be like, I am not a front-facing man. Yeah. No, I am not in the like I am behind the scenes.
I am the behind the scenes. I'm the puppeteer.
Exactly. All right. Well, there he is. Roast and ride. Mother would be very proud. This is what he wears when they're okay. I can't even go there. Grossing my own self out. Let's move to another story. And this is the one I wanted to dig into most because it's fascinating. But Cornel West, professor, like civil rights leader, thinker, taught at Yale, Princeton, Harvard. He's a professor of philosophy at Union Theological Seminary, author of many, many books, incredible thinker, incredible, like I would say, movement leader, thought leader in a way. He's running for president as an independent, as a third party with what is called the People's Party. The People's Party is an organization, is a party, I guess, started in 2016 after Bernie Sanders lost the primary, and it was started by one of Sanders's staffers, I believe, named Nick Brana. I'm not sure if he was a staffer or if he was just working with the campaign. Since then, they've done a lot of things that are, to be honest with you, a fuck ton of mudslinging at other leftists. So they do. There is a lot of like force the vote stuff. Why don't we have Medicare for all? You're not left enough. A little bit of dabbling in some, anti-shutdown COVID weird stuff. They've been very close and tight with people like Jimmy Dore, who, again, if you're listening to this show, you know me and my history with Jimmy Dore, and also how he's just like a walking POS, how he has courted the right more and more and more until the point where he basically just has a far right audience now for anything he does. But, Cornel West is also, he has got the endorsement of people like Medea Benjamin of Code Pink, again, Code Pink has been an anti-war organization for many, many, many years. Did a lot of great work in the run-up to the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. I think Medea Benjamin has done a lot of great work. I'm not so sure about her lately in terms of sort of like political sensibilities. And the last thing I'll say is that the People's Party has also cast a lot of aspersions on basically what they think is like a war in Ukraine that should just stop, that the United States could just end, and it should just end. And by end, I think we kind of, and everyone should understand this, it means Ukraine no longer exists and Ukraine just surrenders to Putin and Russia's aggression. And again, I think we've talked about on this show, we talked about it a few weeks ago, that it's not a great position for the left to hold, that we don't defend people's sovereignty. We don't defend nations' sovereignty, no matter if and the enemy of our enemy is not necessarily our friend, right? And yet we have to sort of learn this lesson again and again. Sorry, that's a long preamble to give you a little bit, Nelini, and everybody, of his campaign announcement. Here we go. Cornel West, Dr. Cornel West.
In these bleak times, I have decided to run for truth and justice, which takes the form of running for president of the United States as a candidate for the People's Party. I enter into quest for truth. I enter into quest for justice. And the presidency is just one vehicle to pursue that truth and justice, what I've been trying to do all of my life. I care about whether you have access to a job with a living wage, decent housing, women having control over their bodies, health care for all, de-escalating the destruction of the planet, the destruction of American democracy, because neither political party wants to tell the truth about Wall Street, about Ukraine, about the Pentagon, about big tech.
Neo-fascists like Brother Trump, or milquetoast neoliberals like Brother Biden. Wow, I'm so happy to make a world-shaking decision. You know what I mean?
Well, I know gangsters when I see them. And gangster's not a subjective expression. It's an objective condition. Do we have what it takes? We shall see.
Yes, we shall see. And if you're just listening and not seeing, the last two little clips were from, and he put this in his campaign video. The first is with Bill Maher, where he equates milquetoast neoliberals with fascists, and I just have questions about that. And then secondly, a little clip from an interview with Joe Rogan. So kind of making them like so not even so left, but like anti-establishment / kind of like crypto right-winger rounds is what I see in a Rogan Maher combo there. And that's sad for someone like Cornel West. But Nelini, please weigh in.
Ooh, okay. Well, I think the thing for me, I have to obviously say, like, look, I remember the first time I read Race Matters, and I remember when I was at Occupy Wall Street and Cornel West was one of the first kind of figures to visit us in the park. And I was 24 years old, and I was like, Cornel, ran over to him, was so excited to take a photo and all of that stuff. So I respect the legacy that he brings, the intellect that he has brought to a lot of things. And also, like, nobody is above critique. Yeah. And the thing for me is like thinking about the stakes of this election, right? Like Joe Biden's like 2020 margin in Wisconsin was only 20,000 votes, right? Like in 2016, Trump's margin, I think, was 80,000. And, you know, around that, just across the country. And I feel, and so when I think
not enough.
When I think about that, and when I think about the platform that he's running with, that only has ballot status in 3 states.
Yeah.
And this is a 50-state election, right? There, I would even say it's like there's 50 elections, 50 plus 1, right? Like not actual, like, and they're different laws in different states. As an organization, you know, Working Families Party, we've actually had to get ballot status in some states, and it's real hard. And I'm not saying it's unimaginable, but with a year and a half out to the election, with so much at stake. And when I think about, you know, a large scale organizing campaign, when I think about resources, because presidential campaigns take resources, I think about where could we be spending resources on corporate, taking out congressional corporate Democrats and making sure we're taking out the Republicans like a George Santos and folks who have been actually awful to our quest for just changing things that we can actually change.
Yeah.
And here's the thing too, like the Ukraine stuff, as somebody, this is like really personal. Like I spent last year near the border of Ukraine. I have a lot of comrades in Romania and Poland that I train, and they were like thankful that we had Biden as the president because of the way he moved. And I'm saying leftists on the ground, progressives, folks who have actually organized, who actually have to deal with this stuff on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. And so I do not take lightly the let's talk about the truth about Ukraine that he says in his video as well, because I actually have people and folks at stake who have been taking up arms and who've been in the trenches. And so for me, yeah, that's where I think it just, you know, all the volunteer hours, all of the could go to other things. Now, I also believe in democracy. So if people want to run, they have every right to. Yeah. And people want to support, they have every right to as well. But for, excuse me, for me, yes, when I saw the announcement, it was a little bit of a side eye. I was just shocked that both with a People's Party and an institution that hasn't been able, in my opinion, to organize effectively except for, you know, tweet about how bad some of us on the left are. Like, I want to see you have actual organizing chops and to be actually to move a base, because it does take a coalition to win, a mass coalition to win the presidency of the United States.
Right. I think that's incredibly well said. And it's important coming from someone who does work with a third party and who can run candidates and will not, you know, I think what I like about the Working Families Party is that it's not about vanity projects, right? And I think we've seen, you know, in the Green Party and Jill Stein explicitly, that a lot of times when running for president feels like a vanity project, and it feels like I'm just going to plant a random flag in the sand and say, if you don't meet this barometer for what I deem to be leftism, then you're not truly progressive. To say nothing of how important saying that during an election where we could be reelecting Donald Trump, I think is incredibly dangerous and scary. And I say that with so much respect for someone like Cornel West. I think it is sad that he was sort of recruited to do this. That speech that he gave, he's such an incredible speaker. He could have done that in the show. Like, he could have just spun that off. But, you know, and I think it is, I totally agree with you that why not focus on a one particular campaign, whether it's mayor, governor, like something you could run yourself. Or I think Dr. Cornel West has been incredible at actually supporting some of the candidates that he does believe in, right? And the causes that he does believe in. You know, and you see, it's just, you know, I have a lot of thoughts, and I think it's important to know, like, just like the Green Party, not really seriously running in all 50 states. Are you seriously running in all 50 states, right, other than online? Is it an online campaign, or is it not, or is it an on the ground kind of campaign? And that's someone I'm saying I want to break the two-party duopoly.
I can't wait to Millie Rock on the graves of the Democrats and the Republicans.
Yes.
Like, as institutions, I can't wait to Millie Rock on that. And also, like, I also live in, we are living also in strange times where you have this, like, you know, abortion clearly backlashed on the right wing, and now they're doubling down on, you know, there are people who are trying to leave Florida, like, leave these states where they've built their homes and their lives because they do not feel safe walking down the street. People are shooting folks just coming up to their door. Like, it is. And for folks who are out there who are like, well, you know, in other countries it's worse. And I'm like, look, I go to Hungary every year. I know what dictatorship looks like and authoritarian looks like. And you don't want to get it to that point. You don't. We're not used to that. You're not used to actually your vote absolutely not counting. Unless, you know, you are a black person.
Well, and it reminds me of it is a very nihilistic, blow it all up. Same thing with who cares about Donald Trump? He could get elected. You know, that kind of framework. It's very much also a GOP ideology. Let's be real. This is flirting with when the GOP says, who cares if we default on the debt? It's like, yeah, because you've only lived in the effing first world. Like, you've only lived in the hegemonic, the like economic hegemon. You have no idea what it's like to live in a country where, like, your inflation rate means whether you live or die, because it's absolutely insane, or like you're defaulting on your debts, and there's all this stuff happening above you, you know, whatever. Like, you're so lucky. Anyway, I have a lot more to say about the People's Party. I'm curious about where they get their funding. I'm gonna be real. I've done some, you know, news broke. We did a little bit of digging around who funds a lot of like third-party secessionist movements around the world in democracies, and it's Russia. Russia funds them. That's who funds a lot of these movements. I'm not saying that that's who funds this movement, but I'm not saying that. And also, Jill Stein was chilling with Michael Flynn and Vladimir Putin a few months before her supposed election. But anyway,
those are little details, right?
Just small little details. Whatever. She got the invite. Russia Today, baby. I want to bring in my next guest, again, another badass, nothing but badasses, all badasses. This is Oops, All Badasses show. And let me get proper introductions. Here we go. Associate professor at Rutgers University, human rights attorney, editor of Jadalia, and author of Justice for Some, Law and in the Question of Palestine. Please welcome Noura Erakat. Noura, thanks for being back on the show.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for this really stimulating discussion.
I mean,
I had my own thoughts about Cornel West joining. I was like, well, yeah, but you know, anyway, not to get into it, because I know you want to talk about Blinken.
No, you can please weigh in.
But there is something to be said about the discussion about what do third parties do for us in a duopoly, and what have we learned from Biden from the last 3 years? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think let's segue that, because I think what we've learned from Biden when it comes to Palestine is there is no difference between his stance and Trump's stance, and to the point where And we could talk about it right now. AIPAC is having their annual meeting, I guess, and Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, spoke there at AIPAC. And AIPAC has since been revealed in the last couple of years to firmly stand with insurrectionist Republicans who did not want Joe Biden to be president. And yet now you have Blinken speaking. So anyway, just thoughts on that and sort of why and how Biden is carrying the Trump legacy when it comes to Israel-Palestine along with their administration.
Yeah, I mean, we knew this before, right? Before this
Right.
AIPAC conference, before Biden came into power, the writing was on the wall that it wasn't just Biden, but it was that the Democratic National Committee was consistent on the Trump policy. So, for example, one of the most controversial things that happened during the Trump administration was the recognition of Israel's declared sovereignty over Jerusalem, right? So many of the headlines ran that this was in contravention of 5 decades of U.S. policy on the question of Jerusalem since the 1967 war. Aptly, this week, today is the anniversary of the start of that war. And yet the DNC had said very clearly that none of their presidential candidates would actually move the U.S. embassy back from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. And so the writing was on the wall. We also know that the Biden administration was in line with the Trump administration on almost every other policy, including Israel's declared sovereignty over the Syrian Golan Heights, including the embassy, where the Abraham Accords. The only thing that the Biden administration did different was to reinstate some $364 million of humanitarian aid to the United Nations Relief Works Agency, or basically for education and healthcare for Palestinian refugees. We knew that before he came into office. Still, many of us, including myself, supported the Biden's presidential bid, not because of the hope that he would change on the question of Palestine, because unlike most other issues, there's almost no daylight between the mainstream Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment. We see the wedge really, really clearly between the progressive Dems, right?
Yes.
And that's why there's an insurrection within the Democratic Party, and can explain why Blinken is at AIPAC, even as AIPAC is supporting the insurrectionists, right? Because they're more closely aligned than actually the progressive Dems and the mainstream Democrats. I supported him nonetheless because I thought that there would be more room for organizing, right? That the punishment would be less severe because Trump had such an authoritarian approach, and beyond just what he was signaling in the spaces that he was shrinking in the United States, the signals to the rest of the world that gave permission for other authoritarians and other fascists to come into office, right? So that if we can at least get Trump out of office, it would stem a wave globally.
Trump is openly
more or less the same.
Yeah, Trump openly and the right openly covets becoming Israel, they love the security state, the apartheid state that is Israel. So I don't think the Democrats fawn or pine for that. But again, how much do they stop it, combat it? And, Biden hasn't had a settlement named after him yet, unlike Trump. That was my favorite news out of the Trump years when it came to the region. But I guess I want to talk about the 67 war and the anniversary, this week. And also at the same time, Anthony Blinken, saying and uttering the words the two-state solution, consistently, even going back to that at this late date in the year 2023. Why, what should we know about the 67 war and what it meant and what it means for, some kind of resolution in the future, two-state, and what it means specifically for the fallacy, the idea of that two-state solution?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this in two parts, right? So the 67 war and the one part and the legacies that it created was a false partition between Israel's undeclared borders. Israel hasn't declared its borders, specifically because it's a settler colonial entity and it continues to expand its colonial takings by taking Palestinian lands and removing Palestinians in a settler colonial project. So in 1967, what we have established is a new narrative that normalizes Israel's establishment in 1948 and normalizes or attempts to normalize the mass removal and forced exile of the majority of Palestinians, some 750,000 Palestinians out of a million natives become exiled from their homeland. And so 1967 marks a moment when that becomes normalized, because now the new attention is given to the Arab lands that Israel has occupied, specifically the Egyptian Sinai, the Syrian Golan Heights, the West Bank, including Jerusalem, as well as the Gaza Strip. So thereafter, we have the framework move from a framework of refugees, of antagonism between Arab states and Israel, now to a Middle East peace process that's ushered by the United States and the Soviet Union following the war. And what we know, very commonly as 242 and 338, the Security Council resolutions that basically say that Israel has to withdraw from the territories that it occupied in war. Now,
this is the occupation as we talk about it. Like, I mean, this is sort of, there's much more, but when you say occupation, it is this land grab.
This land grab, not the land grab in 1948, right? Which is 78% of historical Palestine. That becomes normalized. People are no longer, even in the language of the law, that becomes normalized. So since 67, the issue has been just the territories that Israel occupied. But Israel never intended to withdraw from those territories. It intended to stay, and it has stayed. It's declared its sovereignty over the Golan Heights. It's basically declared that Area C in the West Bank, which is an invention of the peace process, is under de facto annexation, and it's declared sovereignty over East Jerusalem. It has withdrawn from the Egyptian Sinai, and that's why it says it's completed its obligations under, Resolution 242, and it's withdrawn its soldiers and its settlements from the Gaza Strip, but it maintains the occupation over Gaza as well. So when Blinken now says we want the two-state solution and we support the two-state solution, basically he's saying that they want to maintain an ongoing status quo of oppression, because there is a de facto one-state reality whereby Israel is the single power between the Mediterranean Sea and the River Jordan. And actually, there are settlers that live by Palestinians in the West Bank, that there's proximity everywhere. The only distinction is the vast distance between them in terms of legal status, in terms of rights, and the denial, both the denial of Palestinian sovereignty, they can't have their own state, as well as the fact that they will also not become citizens of the state of Israel, because that would undermine a Jewish demographic majority. I mean, but just think of how racist that is. No, Israel has never allowed Palestinians to actually become part of the country. Not that that's what Palestinians are fighting for, right? We're a native people fighting for our self-determination, but have never allowed them to become part of the country, because they think that the undermining of a Jewish demographic majority would destroy Israel. And so when you said earlier, Francesca, you were referring to, and by the way, congratulations on so much that you've recently celebrated. But when you said earlier that, the U.S., celebrates Israel as a model, white supremacists celebrate it as a model, right? Richard Spencer says that this is the future of European sovereignty, what Israel is doing, right? What Israel is doing is exporting exactly what you were saying: a military state, a carceral state, a regime of surveillance, of constant oppression, right? Of a religious fascism that others will follow suit, and many others have, as we've seen, for example, in Hungary, as you mentioned, Nelini, but as well as in India, as well as in Brazil, although there's pushback against that, thankfully, because of the ouster of Bolsonaro.
Yeah. No, I think that's an incredible summary. And it also, so in a sense, when he says two-state it means nothing, and it hasn't. I mean, I think everyone needs to understand, there is no status quo when it comes to Israel, because again, it has not defined its borders. Settlers and settler violence and the seizing of land happens constantly, even though all we're sort of all they're kind of futzing with is hey, could you stop for 3 months? And they're yeah, we were tired anyway. No more settlements for this amount of time. And then the US hails that as a win, even though it's, again, the ground is completely shifted. And we all feel like we're taking crazy pills.
Well, and also just to keep in mind, right, that number one, the reason that the U.S. is so supportive of the two-state solution is to preserve, Zionist settler sovereignty. so that you can preserve this distinction, this partition of population, so that you don't disrupt the Jewish demographic majority. So it's never about Palestinians to begin with. And even if it was applied, it would deny Palestinians the right of return. So even in its most just application, it's not a good solution. But putting that aside, the truth is that the peace process that was ushered in 1991 was dead upon delivery. There was no promise in the Oslo peace process that the U.S. moderated, right, that brokered and is now the sole broker. There's no mention of a state. There's no promise of a state. There will never be a Palestinian state. Over and over, Israeli presidents and leaders have told us there will never be a Palestinian state. So when they say a two-state solution, what they're really referring to is reservations. They created an autonomy plan for Palestinians to maintain their own, limited sovereignty, derivative sovereignty in certain areas, some 6% of the entire territory in Area A, and that's it. So it's like Black homelands in South Africa that were rejected as racist and supremacist projects, but here in this context are hailed as a pathway to the future, which is so ironic, especially now, right? As somebody who's been working on this, and you know this, Francesca, for decades now.
Yes.
When I saw this fascist, right government come into office, quite literally the most fascist that Israel has ever seen, which is saying a lot for Israel, right?
Yeah.
I kind of had this moment where I was like, finally, everybody's going to understand how racist this country is, right? And how racist this regime is, who say, let's wipe out Palestinian cities, who arm settlers to kill with impunity, who change the law so that nobody's held to account, right? Who snipe journalists in full daylight, right? I just had this moment where I was like, now surely Americans will understand. And yet it's the opposite. It's the opposite. It's like living in the Twilight Zone where you have Blinken going to AIPAC, right, in the midst of, Israelis actually led the most robust BDS campaign against Israel because they opposed this government, not on behalf of Palestinians, of course. They could care less and we're invisible to them. But even in that context, we still have the same rhetoric repeating itself. And so there is a commitment to a racist, supremacist, colonial project. The U.S. is committed to it, regardless of what the outcome is. And really, the sad part is where progressives are on this issue, because this should actually push us all to a point of consolidating our position in rejecting any kind of framework that wants to say, but there is a way for Israel to be a liberal democracy and for two states to exist. That's been dead, and we should completely oppose that position.
Yeah. There's a lot there.
As you do. I'm not saying that this is an issue here.
No,
I'm just,
of course. And I wanted to talk about specifically this upheaval inside of Israel, inside of, in opposition to the judicial grab and sort of the changing of I guess it's a concentration in terms of separation of powers there, that has seen massive protests, even to the point where, you're seeing protests in New York on Israel Day, and in Israel on Flag Day, and all these places where usually it's Palestinians and allies and people who, like us, who are out there. And you're oh, now, what do you make of this movement in terms of, and how does it feel? I can only imagine the sting of don't you understand that Palestinians and those also living inside of Israel, this is the democracy that they have been fighting for decades?
Well, yeah, you know what? It just feels like epic gaslighting, right? It's massive protests. I just saw a headline. It's an old headline, but it was a headline that was, the U.S. has a lot to learn from Israel about democracy. It's well, I guess from one white settler colony to
next
a Zionist settler colony, perhaps, maybe, if that's what you mean. But the idea that there would be these massive protests, which tells you that there is a willingness to protest, there is a willingness to mass action, but not even to end the occupation, let alone to end a supremacist, regime that's intact, that Israeli human rights organizations have said is tantamount to apartheid, is Jewish supremacy, right? Is massive gaslighting, because what they want is a return to the status quo. What they're concerned with, and what this recent government brought in, was a coalition of religious religious parties that were enabled, Netanyahu to have yet another political life. That's
Right.
all that it is.
They
They're
can rise from the
homophobic.
dead for all those who are saying Trump won't be reelected. Look at Netanyahu.
Yes, that's
anyway.
another lesson for us to learn, that there is a way. So, but they're homophobic. They're quite violent. They want to employ, they want religious texts to be part of their governing structure. They don't want Israel just to be, people who happen to be Jews, right? But they actually want it to be Jewish in character. They want to draw on, religious texts in order to govern. That's where the protest is coming from, right? Or against, but none of them are actually concerned with the fact that their country, right, oversees and controls the lives of some 6 million Palestinians who live in complete subjugation, subject to a debilitating siege and systematic warfare in the Gaza Strip in an open-air prison, subject to second-class citizenship in Israel, where I just got back from Palestine yesterday. And, one of my friends who's from Nazareth, and I was like, I kind of was hoping that Palestinians on the inside would be the source of new movement. And she said, really, Noura? Our whole goal is to leave the house and come back that day without getting attacked or killed.
Yeah.
Right? Or in the West Bank, where yesterday, a 2-year-old boy was killed, right? When he and his father were trying to get in their car. So these are the conditions that Palestinians live under. That's not what the protests are about. The protests are about whether or not you have secular texts or religious texts, and what kind of governance and a separation of powers that governs Israelis, Jewish Israelis.
Well, I appreciate you breaking that down, because I also don't know the ins and outs of it. So I think it's important. But there's part of me that's like, is that a step? You know what I mean? Talking about, Nelini's we're talking about coalition building, and we know there are, resistors, there are folks who are working against the occupation who are Israeli. Could this be a step? You just said it. They have the fire and the passion to protest. Is that ultimately maybe in the service of what will end the occupation? Is sort of cracking open, and kind of the fallacy that this is the only democracy in the Middle East. Oops, I guess it's incredibly authoritarian and religious based now, and only, you know what I mean? That might actually give way to something broader.
I'm with you and Nelini on strategic opportunity, right?
Right.
That this is about, we have to, take whatever opportunity we can, take this, controversy that they have, widen the controversy. I'm with any kind of opportunity in order to expand the discussion, right? Disruption, controversy creates an opportunity. But I'll tell you this much from my experience in all of the coverage, and there was such robust coverage of these protests.
Yes, there was
NPR,
a lot.
to the New York Times, to the Washington Post, right? Across the board. CNN, constant coverage, right? Not once did they invite a Palestinian analyst to discuss the elephant in the room. Not once. I had journalists call me off record to ask about it, but it never ran in the stories. It never ran in the stories. They were creating a story around Israel and their Israeli fight for democracy that left out Palestinians deliberately because it was too risky. On the ground, there is the tiny camp of left-wing Israelis who will show up with their, there is no democracy under occupation. There are my colleagues who publish, Gideon Levy and Haaretz, and others, Gershon Shafir, who have published, essays that say there is no democracy under apartheid, right? But that has not become widespread. That is not caught on. They have not invited Palestinians to lead, for example.
Sure.
They have not created new coalitions. So whatever opportunities we have, the deep-rooted racism, right? It's really the normalization of racism against Palestinians that has made this opportunity apparent, but not available to us to take advantage of.
Nelini, did you want to jump in at all? I think
I definitely resonate with the moment of gaslighting. It was, when obviously not with the same extremes, but when Trump was elected, right, there were a bunch of people who were out millions of people who were out in the streets. Meanwhile, we had been out during Occupy Wall Street. We had been out, blah, blah. I can insert every movement
Right.
I've been a part of, but we would be here too long. And so, you had that moment, and there is still like, I think particularly like class is something that we still aren't talking about in the United States. And we refuse to, because a lot of the people who've been leading the resistance have been mostly middle-class white women who do not have that much to lose, even though people are dying through the conditions that they have, or being literally pushed out of their homes en masse, where we have tent cities growing in all of these different places. Obviously is not the same thing as the occupation in Israel and Palestine, but I can definitely resonate in terms of that. And I was hoping to see, because I know some of the leftists who are there who've done, and I know that there's still the small crew that have done a lot of stuff for Israelis, but it is really hard. It's really saddened to hear that people are not taking the opportunity to blow the lid off of everything, which is the entire state being a state that decides to that can only survive by oppressing.
But it is interesting.
Population there.
Right. Sorry. I do think it's interesting that there's a limit, because I feel like the Israeli government is so far right. Like it's so, if you imagine how far right you think this country is, like multiply that by, I don't know, Noura, whatever you think the multiplication is. And so it is interesting to see that, okay, Israelis have a limit, but it is also when they feel directly impacted, not necessarily when Palestinians are directly impacted. But I guess I want to move, because, for the first time, and we talked about this the last time you were on, but there's been progress here in the United States. You have, the honoring of Al-Nakba Day, the day that, the state of Israel was created in 1948 with Rashida Tlaib, Representative Tlaib, and that almost didn't happen. That was, I think Kevin McCarthy tried to prevent this commemoration of that date from going forward. And then Bernie Sanders, opened a separate Senate building, conference room. He found his. Right. I imagine Bernie being like, "Well, no one's checked out this committee room. He's going on the the scheduling. What's the MailChimp version of whatever?" And found them a room, and it was beautiful, and seeing everyone sort of like there. So I guess some of your thoughts on the, and lastly, if not now, has been at AIPAC, trying to bird dog some of the people who were there. So again, progressive Jews in this country who are anti-Zionists, who have very much, I think the Trump administration threw into very sharp view just how far right and authoritarian and racist the Israeli government is. And they don't represent the Jews of the world. And so anyway, Noura, thoughts on progress here in this country?
So many thoughts. So one is just about the fact that I'm really, I think 2021, the protests in 2021, what they did was consolidate Palestine, I thought, as a progressive issue. And I thought we broke a dam in mainstream news coverage as well. Like I was literally on there, not debating Zionists anymore, but teaching. I was invited, right? What is settler colonialism? Who are the Palestinian citizens of Israel? Why is this not a democracy, but an apartheid and a settler colony, apartheid state and a settler colony? And we also saw Palestinians consolidate their position against Zionism. I think because of the success of that moment, what we've lived since then is basically a counter-revolution. Right? Where you have groups like AIPAC and the ADL, insist that now any criticism of Israel is tantamount to anti-Semitism, so that you see the White House release reports that say that anti-Semitism is on the rise. And now they have an ambassador on anti-Semitism that needs to combat it, right?
Yeah, but so not from Palestinian and their allies, from your fucking stooges from the right.
You can't make this stuff up, right?
Yeah.
So people who feel like they don't feel safe somewhere, right? That somehow has more cachet than the actual murder of Palestinians and the burning down of entire villages, right? Or this young student, Fatima Muhammad, who just graduated from CUNY Law School, gives a talk that basically echoes everything that we say daily, but gets attacked at the top levels of government, from Senator Ritchie to the Chancellor of CUNY, all together, right? Calling what she said hate speech. So I do think that this all represents weakness. It's a moment of counter-revolution in order to take away these gains, even at the very moment when the Israeli government, for example, has moved the West Bank from, military administration, which gives the veneer of temporariness, right? Military occupation is legal. It's supposed to be temporary, but they moved it under civilian administration, under Bezalel Smotrich. I mean, empirically, Israel is declaring itself an apartheid state, right? It's telling the world, this is who we are. We do not care what you think. And yet here in the United States, they're so committed to this discourse that we're seeing a regression and a backlash. Now, the Nekma Day Memorial was an encapsulation of that. It was supposed to be in the Congressional Visitors Building. The House, Kevin McCarthy, House Speaker, has jurisdiction over that building, canceled it last minute, tried to shut it down in order to celebrate U.S. and Israeli achievements. And instead, we went on with the program in this room, in actually Senator Sanders' committee room. It was his room. And we went on with the program.
Got it.
And it was amazing. Now, for listeners who don't know the significance of this, think about whether what would happen if across the board, like an Indigenous people declared Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, across the board in the middle of Congress, right? That's what Palestinians are doing. That's what we did. Huge. And in the halls of power that sustain this oppressive condition. And so, as bleak as the situation seems and actually is, and, Blinken's address today at AIPAC was, another form of gaslighting. As bleak as it is, it's also tremendous, the strides that we're continuing to make. And I think that the backlash is an indication of our strength and the opposition's crumbling hegemony.
Yes, absolutely. And like, I just want to, I've had Representative Bowman on this show before, and his, he has a lot of supporters of Israel in his jurisdiction and in his district. And he, for example, I think voted for the Iron Dome funding, and I asked him about it. And I think it's interesting to see then his progression since that time, that, he and Bernie Sanders have sent they sent a letter recently to Secretary Blinken about all the escalating violence. I mean, that's another thing kind of to underscore what you were saying. It's like, a year ago with the bombing in Al-Aqsa Mosque during Ramadan, it got massive coverage and it was really, really upsetting to watch. The same thing happened this year. And I didn't see the amount of coverage that I think we saw last year. It was sort of like a normalization of well, I guess that's what happened. And that sort of in tandem with the uprising again inside of Israel, that you're this is people dying, dead, civilians, worshippers.
To the contrary, they use the attacks on Al-Aqsa. I mean, at the deepest level, I think when I watch that, they want to tell us as Palestinians that the natives have no God, right? How easy it is to disgrace us, to disgrace our own divinities, our deities, and to kill us with impunity. That's literally what they're doing in the holiest month for Muslims. Not that all Palestinians are Muslims, but the majority are. But they did that at the same time that they also attacked Gaza in order to deflect attention away from the criticism of the government, right? So that we're also pawns in this domestic dispute. Hey, you can't fight against us because we have this enemy over here. Let's beat up this defenseless population, right?
Which is usually works.
Israelis. And it works. It works.
Noura Erakat, you're wonderful, succinct, brilliant, and tireless, but I know you're tired. And thank you so much for being on the show. Is there anything else you wanted to add, or?
The one thing I will add is that, as much as I say this, I do think that, for us, for the Working Families Party, for all parties, actually, we sustain, the United States sustains these conditions. And even if we just abided by U.S. law, the Arms Export Control Act, the Leahy Amendment, which limits U.S. support based on human rights abuses, all we're asking is for the U.S. out of the Middle East, right? Yep. And this is part of a larger project of basically reducing U.S. militarism abroad. It's, it's bases all over the world, but also a militarism that reflects back at home in the entwinement of military, and military force in law enforcement. And so these things are very entwined. And I'm very happy
Absolutely.
to see that, our protests, Palestinian protests against Israel, are actually connected to ending imperialism in the United States as well, and connected to a program of abolition.
Hell yeah. Noura, thank you so much for your time, and get back to kicking ass. Again, badasses only. Be well. Love you. And Nelini, we've got one more. I've got to subject you to more DeSantis.
Keep going. We keep going.
we truck on. But yeah, just a few. I guess I was going to read a few comments. Sarah Layla says, I could use a shot of Noura's enthusiasm and passion. And that's why like Noura makes me feel alive. I'm like, yes. I just want to huff it. And thank you, Sarah, for being a member. So yeah, just shouting some folks out. And then Tanish Cantos on YouTube says, Angela Davis talks about Black and Palestinian solidarity and freedom is a constant struggle. Yeah, I think that kind of solidarity is, and you see it play out in the squad, right? You see, and interesting, Nelini, and this is the thing about like Working Families Party candidates, progressive candidates that have been undermined by the Israeli lobby. And specifically, and I guess this is for another time, but like there is such an effort to particularly get Black Americans to become like kind of ambassadors for like the occupation in Israel, and like, and it's such a bad faith way, like supporting like Black women, candidates or other ostensibly or imaginably like, diverse and representative candidates, except they're funded by, AIPAC money, and make sure they absolutely will vote yes on every single piece of more funding for that country.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, the thing that is wild is that like AIPAC spent for 13 Democratic primaries, the special elections, they collectively spent 100,000 plus like last year before the fall. Like they spent real money, in trying to defeat and to put in and insert themselves into the democratic process, which is just like, it's just mind-blowing to me that an organization that says they stand for freedom is like, yeah, we're totally okay if a far-right person wins.
Yeah.
As long as it's just freedom for us.
Yeah. And I think to Noura's point, like they are scared too. They're very scared because that's how much money they're putting in, and they're putting it in. They don't even need necessarily like a vote yes. They just don't want like, you can vote present or something. Right. But I think they know, and I think activists and organizers are making them a little scared of the amount of support they're getting inside this country too. So, because they don't want another Rashida Tlaib, they don't want another Ilhan Omar, they don't want another Cori Bush, they don't want all these incredible representatives who dare like speak honestly about this issue. And for so long, it was like an unspeakable thing. So when Noura says that, like imagining if you had like an Indigenous Peoples Day inside of the Senate, like that is exactly what happened. That is huge. Yeah. So there's more to build on, but there's also hope. Yeah. Yes. All right. Let's take it home with again our new segment, Small D Energy Primary. Okay, so there's a few fun things here. So Ron DeSantis, obviously, it's been a week for him. The announcement on Twitter, not so good, a little shaky. Like we didn't even on this show because it's so much happens, but oh my God, like it was worse than we even thought it was going to be.
Yeah, 100%.
Because initially we were like, oh, I guess they're not going to roll out anything new. Like they won't even have video. It'll just be one of those Spaces things that you weirdly listen to. And like, okay, no, it couldn't. It wasn't even that.
It working.
It wasn't even working. Your shit is broke. Like, and oh my God, I love the former staffer at Twitter. Like, I'm just imagining there's someone who at Twitter knew like this is going to fail and it's going to be great.
The former engineer, like Spaces, like the person who created Spaces are going to be like, it's going to fail at the right moment.
Yes, and just the right time. I tuned in. When I tuned in, it sounded like a crypto podcast, like, and it was just a bunch of dudes like verbally sucking Elon off, like just being like, "Well, I think you're really smart to have invested when you did, and and I can't thank you enough. And anyway, if I could push my own coin right now. It's it's just like, what is this? Is this a campaign announcement?
I thought I was in a basement of like I really thought I was in a high school basement, but instead of like the working class, like Irish and Italian dudes that I grew up with in Staten Island, I was with like the uptown, like from like Upper East Side kids, like
Yes.
smoking. Like that's what
The
I felt
finance
like it was.
bros.
Like finance bros. Like,
Yes.
and I was like, but it felt like it was high school finance bros. Like they haven't.
Yes.
Like they never aged, and like mentally or physically probably, but like they never aged. That's what I felt. I was like, wow, this is.
I love that. Like, well, because I went to NYU, like I know that finance bro. I would argue with finance bros in my college classes. That's what I would do. But yeah, so there's a few moments this week, just to bounce back from that. One of the big things is apparently Ron DeSantis there's no clarity on how he actually pronounces his name, if it's DeSantis or if it's DeSantis. DeSantis, he said it multiple times. Of course, the New York Times had to write a whole article about it. And here he is answering a journalist's question, and journalists in air quotes, because this is clearly a setup. Here he is answering the question how he pronounces his name.
I've got a long last name, European name, Steinhauser. There's been some confusion over your last name and the pronunciation, and I'm just wondering, to correct the record, what is it?
Oh, that's ridiculous, these stupid things. Listen, the way to pronounce my last name, Winner.
That's like a Charlie Sheen moment. That was definitely reminded me of Charlie Sheen. Like,
oh yeah. Winner. It also feels, is it real? Like, is that journalist being set up to just ask him that? It kind of sounds like he's being legit. Like, well, I've got a long last name, Steinhauser. Like, what about you? Like, and nothing says, like, if someone asks me how to pronounce my name, I'm gonna say it. I'm not gonna be like, it's pronounced that bitch. You know what I mean? Right. Does he not know, or is it that it is DeSantis and we've been saying DeSantis for so long that he doesn't want to correct us? Like, I don't think he knows.
I bet you he doesn't know. As like somebody who I have like two different pronunciations as somebody who actually does have two pronunciations of my name, like the way my family says it and the way that I say it to the world. Like, I get that, but I don't think he actually knows the correct thing, and I don't think he wants to piss off Italians. Like, I think that's like some Italian thing that is going to creep up on him later on. Columbus Day one day, he's going to go to like a Columbus Day parade. Is it DeSantis or DeSantis? Come on, bro. And he's not going to know.
It's DeSantis. No, he won't know at all. And yeah, it is a Fox News reporter, so we'll see. Who knows? It feels like a little bit of a setup for him to be like, it's pronounced the Winner. Okay, so that was that. Then there was this, of course, a beautiful little shout out to Winston Churchill after D-Day, or before D-Day, whenever the fuck D-Day, whatever it was. But here he is kind of echoing that famous speech of, we will never surrender, we will fight them on all the places.
So because the woke represents a war on truth, we have no other recourse but to wage a war on woke. We fight the woke in the schools. We fight the woke in the legislature. We fight the woke in the corporations. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die.
We will never surrender to the Target swim trunks. There they are, they're rainbow.
Never surrender.
We will never give in to the Black Little Mermaid, just as bad as the Nazis.
Rainbow. We are afraid of rainbows. It should be off of every government thing. I always think about Hawaii's license plate, that it is actually a rainbow, because rainbows are actually all the time in Hawaii.
So beautiful. I know. I love that about.
They're gonna take it off of their license plate because it's too woke.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that about. Actually, that is adorable about Hawaii. I'm like, aw. And the rainbows in the rest of the world mean peace.
Yeah.
So anyway, just so ridiculous. The war on woke. But then here's a funny thing about woke. So Nikki Haley was she had her, CNN, by the way, didn't learn from their town hall. They're like, okay, here's what we do. We'll give everyone a town hall. Yeah. So they gave Nikki Haley a town hall with Jake Tapper. Now they're going to give Mike Pence a town hall, whatever. And
you get a town hall. You get a town hall.
And you get a town. What about, what about that, like, that sort of rando, the first dude to declare the South Asian Republican running? What's his name?
Oh, is that? No, it's not.
I think he might have even gotten one. Shit, I don't know. CNN needs programming. They probably gave him one. But so Nikki Haley was talking about woke means, like you want to be a different gender. Woke means all these things. She was able to define woke. But there's one person who doesn't like the word woke, and that is the former president, Donald Trump.
It's gone sick. And I don't like the term woke because I hear woke. It's like just a term that half the people can't even define it. They don't know what it is.
So that's Trump in Iowa. It was very low, but he said woke. I don't really like the term because they can't even define it. And what is this woke? And how is Donald Trump correct on this? Like, so here.
It's wild.
So
it's wild.
But like, it's perfect because Trump has definitely dabbled in the anti-trans stuff. He's dabbled in the culture war, but he is not trying to give DeSantis in this quest of, in this, again, small D energy primary, he's not trying to give DeSantis that word because DeSantis is that word. He's owned that word.
Yeah, yeah. But also the thing that is that also, let's just remember, Trump doesn't care. Trump has a cultural clout that if you did blow in the 70s and he's been around some gay folks and New York City, obviously, and in fashion and all of these things. And so Trump actually isn't a zealot for this. That's why he doesn't care and he's not going to make it his fight, right? Like he's not a zealot. He literally is just, Ramaswamy was the person that you were talking about.
Yeah, Ramaswamy.
But he isn't, he's not a zealot. Like the scary thing about Trump is that he cares about himself and is an authoritarian in that way. It's not because he actually believes in these principles. So he doesn't care. If tomorrow all of the us woke people would follow Trump, he would embrace woke. Like he doesn't have, and that's DeSantis is trying to make that distinction. But I have to say that I hated the word woke for a while, and now I love it again because of how much these folks use it and hate it and can't define it. Like I kind of love it.
Agreed. And it does mean just like politically aware, socially conscious. Yeah. Like, and it's a great it is a good shorthand for those things. Of course, they mean mostly Black people and gay people. But I think you're right. And that's what MAGA initially, why it was so different and why you did have like those, Milo Yiannopoulos and like openly gay, like Republicans and like toxic ass influencers who were embracing Trump because Trump didn't draw there was, he said the right thing when it came to abortion. And he got Mike Pence to get all the like religious zealots on board. But it was a project for himself and him alone. It wasn't really, you're totally right. It wasn't about because he truly believes that, gay people are the devil. No, he doesn't believe that. But now the party is like, okay, we need to touch the gay people are the devil rail again because we got nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that the party, this is what I've been saying, which I think is really important, is like, look, and I think like just on a global sphere, the tough on crime stuff has not worked for them. In the same way, like definitely people are scared, but when push comes to shove on voting and in Democratic cities, like it hasn't, like Brandon Johnson is mayor of Chicago. Like
it's worked better, I think, on like centrist Dems or like neoliberals than it has on the right.
There's pieces where it's worked, but to the level they wanted it to work, it's kind of failing, right? Their project is failing. They know that they failed with abortion, at least turning it around to be more of a champion thing because they didn't win in a landslide in 2024. So they're looking for something religious. This is the interesting part, is they're looking for something that has to do with religious fundamentalism, Christian fundamentalism, to be specific, right? White Christian fundamentalism, to be even more specific. And this is the thing that they're going towards. Like, this is where they're landing. And like, Trump doesn't care about, I don't think he's probably been to church in since before I was born. Like, you know, like
it's
so
a Bible.
Something, and they're going back to this, and yeah, he'll touch it, but I don't think he will go as far as he's not gonna go to the DeSantis thing. He's gonna keep to the they stole the election away from me. He's gonna bring back some of the stuff on the border. Because that is still his, you know, the Trump wall and all that stuff.
And he's going to hammer them on like being like trying to roll back Medicare and Medicaid,
Yes.
you know, or Medicare specifically and Social Security, like trying to privatize it. He's going to hit the populist, you know, that populist thing again. And they don't really have an answer to that.
No, they do not.
And by the way, neither do Democrats. You know, and when it comes to like real populism, no, neither do Democrats. But it's like, are we seriously going to cede the faux populist lane again to this MFer? And like the one lesson that Republicans would draw from Trump, it's not the racism, it's not really the authoritarianism, it is the faux populism.
Yeah.
You know, whatever, like, I guess that is more fascist. I guess it is kind of fascism. I guess but they don't even have that. They don't have the Mussolini-like quality that Trump does. And I think
I think DeSantis does. I think that DeSantis has this evil quality about him. He doesn't have the charisma.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The Mussolini. You got to have,
that
even
part.
though his ancestors would be so unproud.
They were singing Bella Ciao, I'm telling you, up in those mountains. And now they're like, I bet you they were anti-fascist. And then they came here and, you know, as a lot of people have done over years and years and years, right? They were anti-fascist and now they came over and they're probably just like, oh boy, you're not as good as Mussolini and you're not this either. What are we gonna
depends. It all depends on which Italian you are, where you are. Florida Italian, very different from New York Italian.
That is true. That is true.
Shout out to the late, great Ralph DeGia, who I used to work with, an anarchist Italian immigrant who actually was at the hanging of Sacco and Vanzetti. That is fucking, that's probably was.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I worked with him at the War Resisters League. Shout out to Ralph. I love you wherever you may be. Nelini Stamp, you're amazing, but you don't need me to tell you that. Everybody give Nelini love and follow her on all the things. What should people know? What do you got coming up? Anything exciting?
We love it. Yes. I mean, look, we are gearing up for 2024, but especially if you are in Philadelphia, I know that there was a primary, but we still talk about third party. There is a way to run and win third party here in the city of Philadelphia. So we're supporting Kendra Brooks, who's already our city councilwoman for Working Families Party only. And next up is Nicholas O'Rourke and Jarrett Smith for County Commission. We have 3 chances actually this year to get independent Working Families Party folks where we're not spoiling a Democrat. It's us versus the Republicans.
Yeah. Kendra Brooks is running for
City Council, and so is Nicholas O'Rourke, City Council, and Jarrett Smith is running for County Commission, which is in charge of our voting laws and all of that stuff. So these are really critical before 2024 to get all 3 of these folks elected into office, or not. It'll be the GOP here.
I love it. Yeah. We need more of that. We had some good luck here. Not good luck, good organizing here in LA for our city council, and Eunices Hernandez and Hugo Soto Martinez. Yeah, they're great. They were on the show. That was amazing. All right, Nelini, you take very good care. Come back real soon. And everybody all watching, everybody listening, thank you so much for all your support, for sticking with us, for, just being part of the conversation. Thank you so much, Vicky. Great for becoming a new member. Hell yeah. Robert, thanks for your super chat saying June 6, 2023, the longest bitch, was it? Maybe the most rambling. I guess that means long. The Farmigan, I don't know how to pronounce your name, says, I want to hop on the rainbow train. That sounds like a good train. I think it is a good train. And then DC Trevitt says, who is the Mike Pence voter? I don't know. Because that's the thing is, like, if you're a Christian fundamentalist, like, you already have everything you wanted. You got it all. Now what? I don't understand who the Mike Pence voter is either. I don't think anyone understands who the Republican voter is. I was just talking about this with Matt the other day. Trump saved the Republican Party. Everyone thought, he's going to be the destroyer. No, he saved them. They had 8 years of Bush, 2+ wars. No one in the Bush administration can show their faces. I mean, some of them dare to, including George W. Bush. Like, they were dead in the water. Then Trump comes along, right? So I don't know who they're going back to. Oh, we want to go back to our neoconservative roots? What? Ridiculous. Gary Cooper, yeah, Mike, you don't even have enough guts to say you object to your boss trying to hang you. That's exactly right. That's what that interview was. It was him being like, we've all made some mistakes. It was unfortunate. Like, no, you're not a leader. That's not leader quality, bro. I really wanted to read this comment actually that I saw earlier. Thank you for Kwazi Zeb on Twitch saying, I attended the online launch of the People's Party. It has changed drastically from the original launch promises. They went from a left progressive to Jimmy Dore bullshittery. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, it's okay. It's cool to launch. I think it's fine, but growing slowly and also building in coalition with other people like Working Families Party, who has done this work for so long, that's really important, and so we have to build structures for the long haul, right? And we've heard that from many different people. My mentor Max Elbaum says it all the time. We cannot have personality driven campaigns that flare, sort of like shoot up in the air and then fizzle out. We need this to be constant. And so again, it starts slow, it starts local. I would love for the People's Party to run somebody locally. I would love it for it to feel more than just sort of like a little griftery. Another friend of the show, Raf Shimunov, tweeted quoting the People's Party, that People's Party is basically on board with this anti-woke thing. They retweeted back at Dan Rather, who Dan Rather said, make no mistake, if Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were alive today, he would be stigmatized as woke and attacked accordingly. And People's Party quote tweeted and said, no, MLK's words were the opposite of woke. Rather, if he were alive today, he'd be stigmatized and smeared and canceled by the woke mob. Like, come on, what are we doing, bro? What are we doing, man? Like, why? Don't buy into that bullshit. Don't become a Ron DeSantis. So anyway, thank you so much for that chat. I appreciate it. And Bad Lefty over on YouTube, a member says, a broken clock when it comes to Trump being right about the fact that woke has no definition. Gary Cooper, I appreciate this context. Reform Jews, who are the majority of American Jews, are not even recognized as Jews in Israel thanks to the outsized influence of ultra-Orthodox parties. Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of where the government seems to be heading, but for sure they have been generally and historically welcomed into Israel. And that's sort of that stinging irony of Palestinians themselves not being able to return and not being welcomed or given free trips back, et cetera, et cetera. Anywho, with that, guys, it's been such a good show. Thank you so much for all your support. And let's get into the fart song, because there's some people to really thank. Oh, no. Oh, no. The fart song. Thank you so much to all the people who are patrons of this show. If you're a patron of $10 or more, if you're a new patron, you get a shout out. We don't have any new patrons of $10 or more. That's okay. I get it. But we do have some big tippers. Robert Gilbert, Randy L, Joseph L, and Abdul K. You're wonderful. You can tip the show TBR-Live on Venmo, TBR Live on Cash App. Over on Twitch, what is up? We have Sparrow's Artistry cheering 100 bits. Thank you so much. We have Frank Morningtree giving out 10 community subs. You sweet, sweet child of God. Thank you. Marshall Ghetto resubscribing for 1 month of tier 1. Subscribe for 9 months. Boom. Finally caught the time slot. Thank you, Marshall. You did it. Rose Alba 14 giving out a community sub. Thanks so much. Also resubscribing with Prime. Subscribe for 10 months. You guys know if you have Amazon Prime, you can use that to subscribe to this channel on Twitch and watch back the Friday stream, the bonus bish. And then over Punch Up Dragon, thank you for resubscribing. And Oni Kazoki 11 resubscribing with Prime, subscribe for 2 months, says, take these Bezos bucks, can barely afford it, but you are a real one. That means the world to me. And Gordon Zoll resubscribed or subscribe with Prime. Welcome to the Frantifa, everybody. And thank you, of course, to Paige Omek, who is feeling under the weather, and I hope you feel better very, very soon. To Maximilian Inhofe and to Andy Vasoyan, our editor. We stream every Tuesday and Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Follow the show. TBR Live, Bitchuation Pod on Twitter, at Franny Fio on TikTok and Instagram. And remember, fight the power, fuck the patriarchy, and don't just bitch about it. Be about it. Love y'all.